Hey everyone, Healthy Sports Obsession. Coming up with another episode. I'm Will Hubner here with Mark Mcilroy, here to talk a little bit about golf today. So we had a question from one of our viewers. It comes from Todd from Fairfax, Virginia. I'm just going to read it. Hey guys, I love the show. Was watching a video from the PGA Championship going over Mcilroy and Keopka's swings. It showed that Mcilroy, while smaller than Keopka, is able to generate similar amount of distance on his drive than Keopka because of the amount of hip rotation he uses. I know I will never have the same amount of upper body strength that Keopka has. Should I be trying to add more hip rotation to my swing to be able to hit longer drives? Start out, Mark. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. Obviously, there could be too much or too little hip rotation, but for the majority of the golfers that we're seeing in the clinic, there's almost always an amount of hip rotation that can be worked on to improve drive distances. I'd say you want to basically get as much hip rotation as you can get, internal and external, and still be able to maintain strong stability at the end ranges. So is there such thing as too much hip rotation? Sure, if you can't stabilize it at the end, but if you can stabilize the full motion, you're going to be driving the ball further if you've got more rotation. As far as the upper body strength, I would say there's probably a tipping point of how much upper body strength that you need for a maximal drive, but there's also that tipping point probably leads to a point of overkill. I think the hip strength and range of motion, that's where you're driving your power from. You're really distributing the force that your hips are creating through your arms when you're driving. You don't want to be too weak in the upper body, but I wouldn't say excessive upper body exercises are really going to add a lot onto your drive.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. The other day I was at a sports bar watching a little bit of what they had on TV, and it was a long drive golf competition. And
That's cool.
It was interesting because these guys are jacked. Upper body wise, these guys have so much strength that you look at them, it's like no wonder they can hit the ball so far. Now, granted, I would imagine, I don't know for sure, I haven't seen much research or anything on these guys, but I would imagine their hip rotation is less than a guy like Rory McIlroy, who, while in very good shape, I would not say is as jacked as some of these guys are. I mean, he's more toned than ripped, or upper body
do you remember what numbers were they hitting? I'm curious. What's like a drive contest winner's drive usually?
They were hitting in the kind of low to mid 300s.
Doesn't Rory do that?
Yeah, I mean similar, but again, I mean these guys are strictly. I mean they're getting a few shots at it. They hit some out of the. You have to hit it in a certain target range. So they're just blasting it. And I mean, if they've hit a couple in the range and they have the ability to just hit it as hard as they possibly can, not worrying about if it goes straight or not, I mean, they can hit it a little bit further. But it's interesting to see that the long drive competition guys have a ton of upper body strength. Now, I don't think that makes them good golfers by any means. I mean, we haven't seen the short game, we haven't seen putting, anything like that. But it's interesting to see, these guys, which may or may not have a ton of hip rotation, they definitely have the upper body strength, and those are the guys that are typically hitting the ball the farthest.
I'd be interested to see what their workout programs are. I've never looked into the workout program of just a drive competition distance contestant, but I bet they're doing a lot of squats, a lot of deadlifts. I think the focus, it doesn't hurt to have more upper body strength unless it starts to limit mobility at some point. But I still think that I watched the longest drive ever just before we started the podcast. It's 515 yards. I mean, the guy had adequate hip rotation, but the power was from his pelvis. That's where the power was still driving from his pelvis. Guy had some good sized pipes on him too, but I think the power is still coming more from the area of the pelvis.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about in terms of, we're both physical therapists, doctors of physical therapy, it's I think a myth, or people think that, okay, well, let me stretch my hips, let me at least increase the amount of rotation available that I have to even allow me to use more hip rotation in golf. Oh, surely that will increase my distance. I'm watching this video. That's not always the case, right? We're talking about neuromuscular control, how to use that motion.
Absolutely.
Just because you have motion doesn't mean that you're utilizing it effectively and efficiently to be able to then correlate that to increased performance.
Correct. Yeah, stretching that you can't control motion into, if anything, you could be, set up to potentially cause injury in that if you have a lot of new motion that you're not using well, you're kind of loosey-goosey in that, and you can get some pinching or inflammatory type things from overuse if you don't have good control of those areas. So I would say, let's, our normal PC stuff. Let's get the tissue moving and get you into the new range and start doing some P&F, getting you to be able to control that new range, and then we'll strengthen you up on it.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at, I just looked up kind of the average. Professional long drivers average over 356 yards in competition compared with about 305 yard averages from the PGA Tour drivers, and then 225 from the average amateur, which makes me feel happier. I mean,
so you
I feel
think
like
that
I can get 225?
Well, you think that extra that extra 50 yards? Do you think that is because they're willing to bulk up, or do you think that's just you're just not concerned with accuracy at all? So the amount of the idea of having to control the club, you're decreasing a little bit on the range.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in certainly what you have to say, but also the listeners. I mean, I don't think either of us would consider ourselves golf experts. I think, I probably play maybe, 10 to 15 times a year. Not the greatest golfer. But in terms of golf, I mean, you'd think upper body strength will help you driving the ball. I mean, I know from playing golf and myself, the drive is just one of, many shots for me. But
of course,
when you go into, 200 yards in, you don't really need to drive that ball anymore. You don't need a ton of upper body strength. It's more control. How are you then controlling the hip rotation? How are you controlling your wrist? And kind of figuring out how to actually play the game as opposed to just blasting it off the tee.
But chicks dig the long ball.
Chicks dig the long ball, both golf and baseball. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you need a ton of upper body strength to be good at golf.
Correct. I would agree 100%. And I would say, and Rory's a good example of it, I don't think you even need a ton of upper body strength to potentially generate a lot of force in a golf swing. There is, I don't know what it is, but there is probably a tipping point of a level of upper body strength you have to get to, but pelvis, trunk, drive the power.
Right, and then you're thinking about, I mean, we've been talking about hip rotation, but then, of course, trunk and core. And a lot of people don't understand trunk. I mean, I think when we say trunk, we're talking more kind of hips, pelvic girdle, and essentially your core, your stabilizers.
Right, same thing. Stability, though.
Right, exactly. Core stability is so important in terms of if you're swinging your hips, rotating your hips at a higher rate of speed, then you need your lumbar spine and your core stabilizers to be able to control that motion, then to allow you to efficiently hit that ball and generate speed on the ball.
Right. So the core stability is about getting that great force generated at the pelvis and hips and being able to distribute that force up through the core, arms, club, and ball. If you're not able to stabilize the core, then you're going to be losing a lot of that energy when you're not stabilizing there. A lot of that energy that's going to go in the ball is just going to disappear. Hip strength, core stability, and I'd still put upper body strength probably third on the list for me. Not that it's not important, but I would say
So when we're talking about not the professional golfer, but just the everyday golfer that we all kind of think of in our minds, common injuries. Talk to me a little bit about common injuries that happen in the weekend warriors, the guys who, are mostly just doing, day-to-day things around the house. Maybe they're working in the yard, doing, basic things.
Yeah.
What should they be concerned with for what's a common injury in golf for the average person?
right. Yeah. So in the clinic, I don't think we see we do treat a lot of golfers, but I don't have a lot of examples of people coming in injuring themselves on the golf course. Usually it is the weekend warrior and maybe getting up there in years a little bit and something in life breaks them down. And they're more concerned about getting back to the golf course. A lot of hip replacement patients, worried about rotation, like we said. The treatment would be the same. We want to restore hip rotation, have good control of it, get good trunk stability to distribute that force up through the arms, and again, return you to your normal drive lengths and power pre-injury.
Yeah, I mean, personally, when I think of golf injuries and people that are still able to kind of, play at a decent rate, I think of Tiger Woods, right? He's probably the most famous golfer of all time.
Right.
Potentially the greatest golfer of all time.
See how this career wraps up right here, but yes, potentially.
Yeah, right. And he's already, he's doing better than I was expecting. He's kind of made a turnaround lately. He's actually winning some majors.
Right.
But
go ahead.
I mean, just thinking about kind of the career he had, I mean, a lot of it, he's had quite a few injuries. He has 4 back surgeries. And if we're going back to...
So what would you say, when particularly when he started having those back surgeries, were you think he was going to come back and win another one?
So the first 2, I believe he had discectomies. I think we're talking... come back from disc surgeries.
Well, he did it.
He did it. And then he also, it continued to linger though, for about 6 or 7 years, he had 4 disc surgeries. So it's not like, he had a discectomy and now all of a sudden he's got to have it at another level. And then again, we're not even sure what the 3rd surgery is, but the 4th one is the lumbar fusion. So, could it all be linked to each other, a little bit of rehab on one, but now you're putting increased stress on another level.
See, yeah. And with the fusion, now you don't have any mobility at that specific segment, so now you're potentially looking at a lot of pressure at the other segments.
Right, no chance of motion at a few segments that you're fusing. So now you're talking about golf where you need a ton of lumbar rotation. You're not going to get it out of a few segments. How can you possibly return? And he's doing it. It's incredible.
I would have bet against it.
Oh, yeah, I think we all did. And I think we're all, I think for the most part, people are very happy with how he's doing it. People are excited to get back behind him. Now hasn't done that well after he won the major.
Everybody loves a comeback story, though. Like a good comeback story, And that's what we were looking at potentially when it's some of the things in his life were kind of falling apart, is a little bit of a cascade of injuries after that. So we always got to know our emotional health is related to our physical health. And America loves a good comeback story. I think they're very much ready to love Tiger again, and they are. Hopefully he plays well this weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there are certain people in professional sports that, go through tough times. I mean, Tiger Woods caught cheating with many, many women. I've seen sources say 120 women.
120.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
But again, from there, certain players, like I would say Kobe Bryant was accused of rape, and then he changed.
That was a cheating scandal as well, too, right? Wasn't there a cheating scandal in there?
Cheating scandal, but I think also accused of rape, and then he changed his number from 8 to 24. Social media, you can kind of portray yourself certain ways. The media does a great job at that for certain players.
Tiger should have changed his logo from the TW to a WT or something. Rebrand himself.
But he's done that now. Now people are kind of forgetting about his past, and they just want to see good golf again.
Yeah.
Golf is a tough sport to promote. Not many people are watching golf.
I think people love a comeback story. And I don't want to go back to last week's podcast. We're talking about the Warriors. Risk for injury. He's not weak. He's strong. He's the good guy now.
Right. I mean,
it's going to be a comeback story. People are going to be rooting for it.
It's crazy. I mean, just going back to Durant, you're talking about a guy with OKC playing with Westbrook. Westbrook is a guy that I think a lot of people like to rally around. He's, not the greatest shooter, but he's going to give you everything he's got day in, day out. You live and die by his decisions, right? He takes a long three at the end of the game. Maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't.
Right.
But he's doing what's best for the team. And then to lose 7 games to the Warriors, which you felt like, man, your skin. They got to kind of even the playing field. Maybe they're a little bit more physical than they should be, but they got to figure out a way to.
They always call them scrappy.
Yeah, they're scrappy.
What about does baseball have a good villain? I mean, A-Rod back in the day, Papelbon back in the day. Does baseball have a villain today? I don't know.
I mean, the Yankees used to be kind of the powerhouse, and people wanted to see the Yankees lose.
Judge and Stanton both just seem like straight-up stand-up guys, though. I'm a Red Sox fan. Nobody hates the Yankees more than me, but they seem like gentlemen.
I mean, there's an argument you could say the Red Sox are more of a powerhouse in the last 2 years than the Yankees.
Again, I feel like everyone's likable on the Red Sox right now. We get it.
I don't think. I mean,
Sale. Remember when he cut up that jersey? Like he didn't want to wear a jersey because he thought it felt uncomfortable on him when he was with the White Sox and he cut it up. He could be a little bit of a villain.
Yeah, I mean, just being a Baltimore fan, there was a lot of issues with Manny Machado sliding into Pedroia. What seemed to be, I mean, you could go either way.
Who was the villain there, though? Like,
yeah, the villain seemed to be Manny Machado, right? He slid into...
Who threw at him? I can't remember.
I think it was Chris Sale.
Okay, Sale's a pretty good villain, I think.
And I think at the time, Manny was in free agency, and the Red Sox were linked to potentially going after Manny. He's been thrown behind multiple times to the Red Sox, literally thrown behind his back, and then they finally hit him. But I mean, in the sense, I remember there was a post-game conference where Manny said, like, I completely disrespect the entire organization, I'm never going to play with them. And I remember bringing that up to you, and you said, don't worry about it, we'll pay him enough to where it won't matter.
That happened with David Price. David Price used to hate the Red Sox. He threw at, was it Ortiz? I think he threw at Ortiz, and like there was a big fight, and he was on the books saying he hated the Red Sox, and then when he was like a free agent and the Red Sox brought the money, he was like, not so, throw some money, throw money at all the problems. It's not a problem.
Yeah, it's tough.
Baseball players make a lot of money.
Baseball players make a lot of money. But yeah, and going back to your point, I don't think baseball has as many true villains that other sports do, basketball or football does.
It's cool. Could you remember LeBron for a while? It was like embrace the villain, or is he the white knight? Would you? I don't think I would want to be the villain. But I guess if it's you fit the role. WWE, professional wrestling, it's a thing. It's like, do you want to build your persona as the villain? Are you going to be the Undertaker, or are you going to be the Rock? It's kind of fun to do either one.
But then, in a sense, I mean, that goes back to a different kind of conspiracy theory thinking. I mean, WWE, obviously, everybody knows or should know that it's fake.
There's a
right?
script.
The storyline's fake. Vince McMahon's writing every plot and kind of telling the athletes to do what they want to do. You, I know, personally have a theory that the NBA is completely rigged, and you think that, Adam Silver is calling kind of the shots and telling...
I got shot down a little bit with this one not going 7 games.
You did get shot down with this one not going 7 games.
I still, when I'm watching the game, it seems like the team that needs to win to extend the series usually gets some more calls going their way. I don't know what that is.
It was interesting because when you told me that, and then we were watching Game 5 where the Warriors did win, the Warriors needed to win.
Right.
There was a play with like less than a minute left. The Warriors had a ball up 1, I think maybe 45 seconds left. And you would think, the NBA, Adam Silver, everybody wanting the Warriors to win, push it to a Game 6, hopefully pushing it to a Game 7. There was an offensive foul called, kind of an iffy. DeMarcus Cousins sets a screen on a player. I forget who it was trying to get open. But that goes against the conspiracy. That goes against...
It was a moving foul, too, right?
It was a moving foul, Nobody needs to be called, in a sense.
It's never called.
Warriors already up? Called?
Yeah, so, yeah. I was stood by it in the moment that we were talking about it, but I'm willing to say that this year shut down my conspiracy a little bit. Or maybe it's just got to fall the right way, but maybe the refs get like, there's a little bonus if we go 6 games. It's not like they can just throw the whole game, but if... Again, that was a ridiculous moving. I don't know why that would be called.
Yeah.
Even if there is no conspiracy, that call made no sense.
All right, so let's move into fantasy football. So we talked about kind of the top tier quarterbacks last week.
Yes.
Big ones being you want Mahomes, Andrew Luck. We didn't talk about it, but Deshaun Watson's in there.
Rodgers.
And then Aaron Rodgers for sure.
Yeah, so, you said you want him. I don't really want him because usually I'm gonna wait to get the quarterback. Most guys at times those guys are getting drafted before.
Exactly, and your big thing was actually you were a big fan of Kyler Murray. If you can get him, I think you said 8th round maybe.
It's not gonna happen. It's happening right now in mock drafts. It's not gonna happen.
You think he's moving up higher?
I think he's sliding up every week.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about fantasy running backs. So top tier give me a few guys that you think are just a class above everybody else.
Boom, it's easy. It's Saquon, Zeke, Kamara, McCaffrey. Those are the top 4 picks.
You're talking PPR or non-PPR or both?
Both, basically for both. Zeke will take a little hit in PPR. He'll drop a little bit, but I mean, his touchdowns could go up so much this year that I don't even know if you'd say that.
Why do you think they'll go up so much?
He said 6 last year. He had a great fantasy year, and he only had 6 rushing touchdowns. Just progression back to the mean. It doesn't make sense. Like, they should go up. Kamara had 16. You'd say they're probably going to come down, though he had 14 the year before, and they still went up. But yeah, I would say PPR, non-PPR, I think those are probably the top 4 players either way. You could maybe slide up a receiver in PPR to the 4th slot if you're the type of guy that really needs a receiver, top receiver in PPR.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So we talk all the time, and you were telling me about, we were just talking random tight ends, and I asked you what you thought of Eric Ebron, and you were telling me that you're not big on touchdowns, hard to reproduce touchdowns, right? Like, if you take the touchdowns out of Eric Ebron's production last year, he's not that great of a tight end.
Right.
Still, tight ends aren't a great spot anyway. You're kind of always dealing with is he starting? Is he going to get a few catches for me?
Sure. Particularly Ebron, I mean, big bodies, basketball players, power forwards make good red zone targets, but still, it's just hard to reproduce touchdowns. They bring in another guy a little similar to him, Devin Funchess, former tight end who's playing receiver. He could take a couple away. I don't usually like to bank on touchdowns. If you see someone who you think's a power forward, and you see his touchdown numbers are a little bit lower the year before, and he's fallen in the draft because of that, I'd say that's maybe a guy who could, again, progress back to the mean and maybe bump up his touchdowns a little bit.
Right, and I don't want to spend too much time on tight ends because that's going to be another episode. But when going back to Zeke, great player, didn't have that many touchdowns.
Right.
You're kind of going the other way. You'd rather bank on a guy who had a good year, didn't have a ton of touchdowns, so you can kind of project them to have more touchdowns the following year.
Yeah, he had 77 catches last year, which was up for him. They drafted Tony Pollard, I think, in the 3rd round, and he's sort of that scat back guy that might take some catches away too, so you can take a little hit in PPR, but I think even in PPR, you're pretty happy with Zeke on your team.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I had personally, I had McCaffrey in 3 of the 4 leagues last year that I played in. Loved him. Right?
PPR crushed it.
Great guy. Yeah.
Is he going to lose anything? He's not going to lose anything from C.J. Anderson, I don't think.
I don't think so. I think if anything, he'll gain. I think he's going to be.
I think they were going to tell Cam with the rotator cuff stuff, you can't run, man. You got to hand the ball off to.
That was the kind of the worst thing. The knock on McCaffrey is that if you get too close to the goal line,
Cam's getting the touchdown.
Cam's getting the touchdown.
But I think I still think Cam's going to do it anyway a little bit. But I think the med team there and the coaches are going to be like, Cam, really, we don't want you to run in the red zone unless it's absolutely dire.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about Saquon, clearly the number 1 pick overall going into this year. That's kind of the consensus, what everybody's saying. But you're looking at they lost OBJ. Everybody
stacked the box against them,
Everybody knocked their offensive line last year.
Their offensive line got better.
They haven't changed anything on offense. in terms of quarterback, Eli Manning's still the same guy. Most people are not huge fans of Eli Manning. They're like, oh, who are we going to get in the draft? We got Daniel Jones. Maybe leave that for another episode.
Right.
But in the sense of Saquon had a great year as a rookie year. A lot of times in NFL, particularly fantasy, rookie, whatever position you are, they don't do as well as in the second year as they do in the first year.
Third year. Well, recently we've had a lot of sophomore slumps, actually.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Correct, yeah. So a lot of them sophomore slumps. So he's going into his sophomore year. I think there is some risk on the Saquon pick, knowing that Eli might not be the quarterback for the year. Who's to say what happens with Daniel Jones? The thing about Eli is he just likes to get the ball out of his hands so fast. He really doesn't want to throw an interception or get hit. So I think Saquon for PPR is going to actually maybe even bump up catches where he was at about 91 or something last year. I think it actually could increase. So I think he's safe in PPR. In non-PPR, if the offense just is a crap show, then, it could be a bust of a pick. But I don't think there's any chance he's terrible.
Yeah, thinking back to last year, I remember in one of my leagues I had the first pick, and I thought, it's a shoo-in. Todd Gurley's the guy.
Yeah.
He's a beast. And then he did have a good year. He ended up, I think, 4th overall in fantasy points, in terms of running back, losing out to Saquon and Christian McCaffrey.
Right, third.
Right, and Kamara right below him. What happened to Gurley? Why is he not in the top tier this year?
Yeah, so Gurley has the knee stuff that was lingering at the end of the year last year. We're worried that it's just still there. He's just he had that bad knee injury in college. ACL came back and was good on it, but is there already a little bit of arthritis setting in at his young age of 24, where it's just an NFL season is not something that he will be able to sustain. They drafted the rookie in the 3rd round, Darnell Henderson, who's a good football player, and the thing is, they're thinking that Henderson's going to be taking, maybe 25% of the caseload. Gurley has lost about 15 pounds at the recommendation of trainers and doctors. The idea of just weighing less might be easier on his knee is not a good sign. I'm pretty much not touching Todd Gurley right now on just the risk that lost some guys there. Could another running back still perform similar to him? It's possible. So he's going in the mid-second round most drafts right now. I'm not willing to take him there.
Really? Mid-second round, you wouldn't take Todd Gurley?
Nope, I don't. Not interested.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So if you spend, say, for whatever reason, first round, you're kind of in that classic kind of 7, 8, 9 pick, and you're like, well, the top tier running backs are gone. Maybe, do I want to get a running back, or do I kind of take the top tier wide receiver, maybe
Sure,
like a Devontae Adams?
DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams.
Yep, sure. You still, even if you've taken a receiver first, still not touching Gurley.
No.
Really?
No. I'd much rather have Joe Mixon. He's just younger. Younger. Gurley's younger. I just feel he's healthier.
Can I get you on record saying next year you're predicting Joe Mixon more overall fantasy points than Todd Gurley?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
All right, interesting.
It's a projection.
I can't wait to see that.
Well, I mean, things can change leading up to the NFL season. I don't think Gurley's going to play in preseason, so I don't think we're going to see much. But yeah.
Now, are you basing this off of you think Todd Gurley is just going to be injured, not going to get as many snaps as Joe Mixon? You're saying snap for snap, they both get 200 snaps for the whole year. Mixon's going to outplay Gurley. Snap touches, I'm talking.
So no, I won't speak to that. I just think the plan in LA is to limit Gurley snaps to keep him healthy. If they make a playoff run, they've got Todd Gurley in the playoffs this year, which failed them last year. And the goal in Cincinnati is to, they feed the heck out of Joe Mixon. Yeah, no, I'll take Mixon over Gurley right now.
What's going on with Gio Bernard? Is he still on that team?
Yeah, he's a good football player. He's no Joe Mixon. He's not going to grind in first down and second down like Mixon does.
But is he going to take third down carries or third down backs? The snaps there.
Maybe, but probably. I think Mixon can do most of the things that Gio can do, and also grind. Gio will get in there a little bit. Sure, he's going to get his 7 to 8 carries a game. I got Mixon at like 20. Gurley at maybe 15.
All right.
Not touches, carries, but yeah.
So going on, so we kind of touched on Gurley. Tell me about Melvin Gordon, another kind of guy that got injured late in the year, ended up, did well against the Ravens in the playoffs and also moving past that round. But do you think he's not in your top 4? Is he kind of that next tier?
Yeah, he's a stud. He's in a contract year, which is always motivational. I'd say he can catch the ball, but with Austin Eckler there, I think that offense is going to be a lot better overall, getting the tight end back there, bring back the offensive coordinator they had for a while, that Wisenhunt that was so good with Rivers. I think they're going to have a great year. I think Gordon's going to benefit from it. I would say a slight knock on PPR that I think he might come off the field a little bit on some passing downs. And he has a hard time staying healthy for a full season. Non-PPR, he would be my 5th pick. And a PPR, I'd probably be willing to take the receiver there.
Tell me a little bit about, so I was big last year on Justin Jackson.
Sure.
Now, if I'm looking at current wide receiver depth chart, you got Melvin Gordon, clearly number 1. You got Eckler, you talked about, had some injury concerns last year.
Yeah.
But you also have Newsome. Newsome's kind of in that list with Eckler, and then in your third depth chart or third running back, you have Justin Jackson and Tremaine Pope. So tell me about Justin Jackson, kind of where he fits in that.
Hey, I don't know a lot about Newsome. I'd say Justin Jackson's probably the other backup there. I would say if you're a Melvin Gordon owner in a deep league where you really like to get the handcuff, I would be concerned that maybe it isn't Austin Eckler and that it could be Justin Jackson. I don't know that answer. I think training camp will tell us a little bit more if they see Justin Jackson as someone, whether he's more of a first and second down back if Gordon's out and Eckler stays in the third down back, or if they're going to use him a little bit in that third down back role too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty, I guess I'd say old school in the sense of that I want my running backs to be
Is clearly the best at the first and second down back role. Jackson's probably second. Eckler can still do it. Eckler's probably the best pass catcher out of them, though I think Gordon's pretty close to him, and what he can do when he gets the ball is obviously worth the value too. And Jackson not too far. So you get three backs that can kind of do a little bit of jack of all trades.
All right, so we can't leave the podcast without talking about probably the biggest controversy of last year and going into this year, Le'Veon Bell, right? Sits out the entire year last year with the Steelers. Now he gets picked up by the Jets. So he's not, I mean, we haven't even touched about him. We've talked about top tiers, we talked about Gurley, we talked about Gordon. We're looking at our seventh running back right now that we're talking about. Le'Veon Bell finally falls into the mix. Tell me about where do you see him being this year in terms of, does sitting out a year, we have no idea how much he's been working out, and I'm assuming he's been working out and still keeping himself in.
There are reports that he was out of shape last year, but who knows where? I have no idea where he'd be now.
Where do you see? Where are you drafting him if you have the chance?
Me right now, as of today, I'm looking at the back end of the first round, maybe even second round. He's usually going before I want him, and it's just the only reason is it's just the uncertainty. Just new team, new offense. Steelers offense, obviously a great offense to be a running back in. We saw James Conner come in and play at a very high level. I don't think it's a bad situation. It's not good that Adam Gase came out and kind of said he didn't want him and then said he did want him. It just seems like a lot of hot water to use. Like you want your first round pick to be sure a stud. I think Le'Veon Bell.
Pick, right? So you got your 10th, and then you're also going to get 14th pick.
Yep.
So do you go with Le'Veon Bell, take kind of a relatively top tier running back 10th pick, or do you pick maybe a top wide receiver and hope that Le'Veon Bell lands you at 14th?
But Bell's not going to be there. I would hope. It depends. different websites have them slated differently, and a lot of times players will fall just depending where they're slated. Ideally, in that situation, I'd much rather take a top wide receiver and get Joe Mixon in the second round. I'm a big Joe Mixon fan. David Johnson could fall to the second round. That's another risky pick.
So now we're what's it, 2 years or 3 years ago, where David Johnson was clearly the number one pick everybody's picking,
2 years ago.
and then he got hurt.
2 years ago, he broke his wrist in the first game and didn't play. And the year before, he was a top player in fantasy. Last year, terrible offensive line. It was all terrible. The idea this year is that the Kingsbury's offense, again, we talked about the Kyler Murray stuff, the offense is going to be so fast that everyone's just going to get high workloads. Kingsbury's never really used one stud running back, but it's not like he has another option with David Johnson. I think there's risk. He's going in the first round a lot. If I can get him in the second round, I'm happy with it. James Conner would go in the first round around that 10th pick. I'd probably be okay taking Conner there too, and letting the receiver fall to me in the second round. There's good receivers at pick 14.
Very interesting. So you mentioned James Conner. So now we're talking about Le'Veon Bell sits out a year. Who does that benefit the most? Well, James Conner.
Sure.
Had a great year.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about the next year. So Le'Veon Bell's gone, so now it's Conner's position to lose. You're talking about end of first round.
Conner's talent is a first-round talent too.
I mean, we talked about feel-good story last week.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you not, I love the Ravens. How can you not feel good about James Conner?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just too good of a story to dislike the guy. I dislike what he's doing with the Steelers. But as a person, I mean, I'm not going to knock him or Shazier for the same matter. The Steelers seem to have a couple of good guys, even though their team is terrible.
Snell can come in and play. I think Connor's still a workhorse for the most part. And Pittsburgh does like to use workhorse style backs.
I mean, when we talk about running backs and we're talking about, you got your guys who are kind of first and second down goal line backs, and then you got the guys who you're losing carries and in a PPR league, you don't want to be losing those receptions. So, you got these guys like James White who maybe aren't scoring touchdowns, but they're getting 7-8 catches a game.
Or Cohen in Chicago.
Oh, it's infuriating unless you have those guys, and that's my poor style of drafting. Maybe you want to draft those guys, but if we're looking at Le'Veon Bell's, his backups, we got Ty Montgomery,
sure,
who's kind of went from Green Bay last year, ended up in Baltimore, which he did nothing with Baltimore, but he's a fast, quick kind of. You can put him as a wide receiver,
sure.
And then you got Elijah McGuire, who's kind of a pounded in there back.
Yeah.
I don't know if Le'Veon Bell's going to lose too many. I mean, he's a good athlete. I don't see him losing much.
I don't think those guys are in Le'Veon Bell's category at all. I think Le'Veon's on the field every play that he's capable of being on the field, and those guys fill in when he's not able to play.
I agree. In a general sense, I mean, Le'Veon hasn't been. He's missed
as I possibly could. They've been just exciting to play football, get the ball. It's the guts and the glory. It's beautiful. But running backs in the NFL sort of get the shaft with the paychecks. Just that you get a 4-year rookie contract if you're a first-round pick, 5th-year option, and that's what happened to Bell. They want to do a 6th-year option on it. Basically, 6 years, you're talking about the career of an NFL running back. He's never cashed in. I don't blame him. He got the shaft. I wish him the best in New York.
I agree.
I think my Pats are still going to beat the hell out of the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the Jets, right?
But he's the best. He's the best offense. There's no way they can't use him. He's the best offensive player on the team. If he doesn't get hurt, I think his floor will be okay. It just still feels riskier than the other guys.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see. I think he'll have a good fantasy year. I would have no problem taking Le'Veon Bell.
5th, 6th.
Yeah, probably 6th-ish.
I can be talked into it. As camp goes on and things go well with him and Adam Gase, I think I'll probably move him up.
Yeah, I personally have nothing against him sitting out a year. I think it was a smart move on his part. Props to him for actually going through it.
But the one negative is I think the contract that Pittsburgh initially offered him was actually better than the contract that he ended up taking with the Jets. So he should have taken that. And then he got maybe some bad advice from an agent or something. But at that point, if you're not going to get anything good, then I'm okay with him sitting out too.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a sense of, you're getting more carries than more touches than any other running back in the league. You are clearly the best running back in the league based on numbers, objective data.
Sure.
And then your team is not going to, they don't want to get you long term. They just want to keep kind of, grinding it into you over and over and over again. Screw it. Sit out a year, get your max contract, go to a team, like the Jets where they're going to, again, probably use you more than you want to be used.
Yeah, I mean, he said F the man, and that's what I'm all for that. It's my body, it's my health. Head traumas, we're talking about. All these guys have terrible head trauma from it. Why go through it if you're not willing to be paid for your value? And these guys are paid multi-millions of dollars, and we know that they're all well paid, but it still is relative. Like, I mean, he was not being paid his value for what he was able to produce. I'm with him.
Yeah.
Good for him. He got paid. Hopefully it works out for him and Adam Gase.
I mean, just with his running style, right? Like, he tends to delay it a little bit, wait for
that shutter step, that little jump cut.
It's
got the best jump cut in the history of the NFL.
But if you don't have a good line to do that, I mean, if you're doing that in Indianapolis, you're doing that in a team with the New York Giants.
Sure, yeah.
If Saquon
Giants
delayed,
are better. No, Giants are better.
But last year, if Saquon delayed his touches, he waited 2 seconds before really, letting the play come to him. Oh, he's gonna be terrible. He's just going to get crushed. I mean, you got to really, with that style, I mean, you got to have the players in front of you to be able to block for you and kind of open up lanes for you. Otherwise, you're just going to be crushed.
Not enough credit goes to the offensive lines.
Exactly.
Buy them steak dinners every night.
Still not getting paid as much as they should.
Saquon, buy those guys steak dinners every night. 100 yards, they get a steak dinner.
All right. Healthy Sports Obsession. Will Huebner here, Mark Mcilroy. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear your comments. Let us know what you think about...
And questions, too.
Yeah, questions, too. Thanks, Todd, for the great question. We want to hear more, so let us know what you think about...
Where are they sending their questions into again?
Right on the the podcast page. So if you click our link, you'll see our webpage and just write a comment right on there. We'll see your question. We'll address it, and then we'll go from there.
Can they email them in as well?
Yeah, you can email it in there for sure.
At
Will and Marks Healthy Sports Obsession at gmail.com.
Boom.
Send it in there.